Hello, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Sisters of Legacy. We're going to run our intro. We'll be right back. All right, guys, thanks for joining us tonight. So, tonight we're a couple of sisters short, so it's going to be me and Trina holding it down, New York style.
New York.
So, I am Samantha Walker and the lovely
Katrina Taylor.
yes. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We do have a very interesting topic and some interesting guests to go along with those topics. So, first, we are going to talk about social work, mainly in our school systems with our babies. And I have the perfect person that's going to share her 20 plus year knowledge with us. So we have Elesha Curvey. Hey, Elesha.
Hello. Hey.
Hello.
So thank
Hi.
you for agreeing to join us tonight and share your wealth of knowledge and be a part of the conversation. So I want to thank you in advance. So give us a synopsis, because I know, with a job like this, the list of things you do is probably never ending. But tell us, like the core of what you do.
So the core of what we do is to help students and families remove barriers that impede them from getting their education, that barriers that stop parents from being able to help their students in any way to achieve their academic success, and ultimately trying to make sure that every student has an equal opportunity, close to an equal opportunity to getting meeting their graduation requirements. And it starts as early as pre-K.
Okay, as early as pre-K. And so your school is what grades, what ages?
So I'm not in the school. I work for the district, and
Okay.
so I support the schools from elementary through high school and some of our charter schools in the Atlanta public school system.
Okay.
And that's a position. The position of truancy just offers prevention and intervention strategies for the school-based social workers. So I've been in the schools for the 22 of the 23 years. This is my first year as the truancy social worker for the entire district.
Wow. Applause on that. That sounds like a big load to carry for
Big
a
load.
whole district. So I guess let's start with something easy.
Okay.
So okay, we know that the pandemic has happened and public school, private school all around has looked very different for the last year and a half. Um,
Yes.
Tell us what has been some of your experience with that
So
as a social worker.
as a social worker, a lot of my experience has been with recognizing the social issues that have been there, but now highlighted. Like if you were living check to check, now you may not have a check. So now you may be in I guess, in the situation of being homeless or becoming homeless. I noticed the homeless families even had a harder time finding some stability, more people without jobs. So the panic and everything took precedence over, of course, education. And then looking at the school lens, where people felt like, well, we're giving them laptops, we're giving them hotspots, so we should be good. Not thinking about all the other issues, economic, mental health, medical, any other thing that would take precedence over education. We were having to help with the list of helping people to find compassion and grace for these families who had more pressing issues than just, education. A lot of people feel like education goes on that same Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but it's not. It's not on the hierarchy of needs. It's just in a place of where you would put education. That's what we all had to learn and understand.
Okay, so what were some of the steps that were taken to try to bridge that gap?
First, we tried to do surveys to try to inquire with our families at the schools of what were their needs. I mean, we tried to think of some of the more pressing issues to put them there and then leaving a space for parents to share what the needs were. Also, doing assessments with students to see what they felt their needs were. And it wasn't just about having a computer or having help with homework, but are you hungry? Are you sick? Are you safe? Do you feel safe? Things like that. And then we also had to look at some of our protocols to make sure that they were in line with trying to help families and not be so punitive. For instance, truancy courts for Atlanta and DFACS that also took a stance where they were not taking petitions or certain types of petitions regarding attendance. And so instead of having those punitive measures in place, we had to have more of a what do you need? So lining up resources, trying to make sure that if we remove the barrier of food, can your child, learn? If we remove the barrier of having a place to stay, can your child learn? Just trying to find those steps and not pressing them so much, knowing that it's important, but also knowing that the home life is equally as important or more important than just educating. So we had to educate our staff, helping people to kind of make a paradigm shift in their own minds, but also recognizing that the pandemic was also hitting a lot of our staff too, and they weren't able to make that mental, paradigm shift because they were going through their own economic, mental health, physical health woes too.
Wow.
I heard you talk about providing other basic needs. Now I know in my school district here in New York, they continue to try to do like a lunch program where families could go and get lunch during the pandemic. But where we live, it's like it was hard. What I saw was it's still hard for people to get to and get the children to the school to even get the lunch.
Hmm.
Um, so were there other issues that came up even as you tried to, um, you know, provide other needs for families?
Absolutely. The first, when the pandemic first hit, they were setting up sites for families to pick up food. And then as we learned more about the spread, then we had to cut that method out for them being able to come. Even though we were wearing masks and gloves, that was still, not the safest way to distribute food. And so they thought about having the bus drivers to do the deliveries to the bus stops, but they also found that that still didn't reach everyone because if your parent was at work, you couldn't have your kid at the bus stop waiting to get the food. So
Right.
they tried to do the least restrictive type of service for food just to make sure that we captured most people. And then those we couldn't capture, we tried to set up other means to make sure that they got food as they were identified.
So what were like you said, you guys found out that the staff was also having their fair share of of issues as well as the students. What was some of the emotional things that you noticed about the staff? Maybe with having to come back in the building or reopening the buildings.
Definitely fear, the unknown, and how things transpired. People were not really trusting what was said as far as how safety would be outlined.
Right.
Did not feel safe as far as the protocols, especially when they said we're coming back to school. That just looked very broad. So they were worried about the numbers of who would be in the building, worried about other health conditions, because even though the ADA set up provisions for, people that had health issues to do telework or some form of outside type of work, the caregivers, I know, like myself, for my husband, it was difficult to get the services. It was up to your job to decide if they would allow you to do your type of work at home. And so, like teachers who are essential, to schools and teaching, it just kind of varied across the board. And to some, it didn't seem fair, how certain people were selected to be home to telework, and then others had to go in the building. But once they got in the building, some of the fears kind of were laid to the side, because not as many kids as they anticipated in the
Right.
first place didn't even show up. So it was like you went on a roller coaster of emotions about going, and then it was really not that many kids. But who would have really known that,
Right.
because the parents were on the same ride as well, thinking about safety too.
Did you guys lose teachers, because of, and I don't mean like as far as them passing. I mean like,
Yes.
some that decided like I'm not returning, or like they're emotional, like they just couldn't, wrap their mind around it.
Yeah, I don't know specifically any, but
Okay.
I did hear that people did say, I just can't do this, or I'm not returning for the following school year, which would be this school year. I did hear that. I don't know if the number was great enough for it to be an impact, but I did hear that that was a great concern, and people were looking for other careers, not really going to another system, just
Right.
other careers.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay. So what were some of the challenges? I mean, I know, like for some of the students, like with being at home, like was it, hard focusing? Was it just, because I know for my son, like focus was, he at home, he was just so relaxed. Like,
Yeah.
he'd be, half on the screen, and then if there was anything going on in the other part of the house, he just, I know
Tune
focus was
into
hard
that.
for him. Right.
Yeah, so it varied across the district. So where we're situated, then you have the I guess the affluent, and then you have the socioeconomic class that's like in the mid range, and then you have the poorer class. And so I would say for the students who were in the lower socioeconomic bracket, without the pure support of parents because they had to work, or just not into education, at a certain level, they had more challenges either logging on time, having that accountability and boundaries to say, here's a start time, here's an end time, and checking in with teachers. That was a huge thing. Or even playing with their technology, breaking it, not having access, breaking the hotspots, like not paying attention. Not saying it didn't happen in other
Right.
brackets of income. It was just heightened in the lower socioeconomic bracket because we tracked it. Seeing where are some of the issues, or where are the most issues. And then overall, I would say we even had mental health issues concerning virtual, because there were some students across the board who, getting on technology to do work was a huge challenge, either because there were deficits, and now you're in a classroom, you can hide behind, just being in a classroom, but on a
Right.
screen with all the faces, that was intimidating, that caused anxiety. Some parents understood it, some didn't. We had some students, as far as having suicidal ideations due to having to use that method as just the standard for learning. And so we had to learn how to build out other alternatives for students to learn outside of just being virtual, which was difficult because some teachers struggled with teaching virtually, and then others struggled with coming up with alternatives, because when you're just used to doing it one way for years and years and years, and you're not tech savvy, it could pose a great problem. So I think hopefully they did take that opportunity to identify who had strengths and who had weaknesses, so going forward we can better, you know assess our students, especially if we end up in a situation where we have to be out of the school building again.
Right. So were there things put in place after you guys realized, the students had anxiety or, possible suicidal, things happening? Were there things that were put in place?
It was case by case, school by school, and basically based on if it was reported, that we need assistance with um, this particular issue, which is not of the norm, and how do we support students. So mostly they tried to set up situations where you would have a class teacher class recorded so the student can listen, or not mandating that they have their camera on, because that was huge. I mean, not just in Georgia, but across the
Mhm.
country. Um, have the camera on like that. We got to see your face. And I get it, a lot of situations happen on camera, parents forgetting too that the kids are on camera and you see them in their 90s, or, doing things in front of the camera with the kid, just not just thinking about it. Because if you're not used to being on camera, I know I had to remember myself, like you can see my headboard on my bed, and getting a screen to make sure you don't see my background. But it's just been a journey, and it's been a learning curve. And I think schools recognize that we need to have, I guess, not just one strict way of educating. It's not just special ed or general ed. There needs to be other caveats to even general ed, to make sure that we support students, because they're not robots. I mean, I don't think they thought they were, but I think they see better now that we need to really try to do more individualized assessments to see what students need.
Right. Like that was kind of my next question, like going forward, hopefully next year everybody will be able to fully return back and get back into, the everyday in the building education. Do you think that different policies and guidelines will be applied going forward?
It's my hope that they do recognize, because I'm not a part of leadership. I'm not entirely sure how much growth they actually saw or learned as far as the deficits. But I know, working in support staff, we definitely, as a counseling department, social work department, nursing department, and school psychologists, we see that there needs to be a lot of mindset shifts, because when the doors open, we already know school is not going to go back to business as usual at all. There, because there has been a lot of academic time lost. Even if you were
Right.
on screen, even if you were on screen, does not mean that you got what you needed because you logged in every day. And the kids who didn't log in every day, they're even at a greater disadvantage. So we know there's going to be behavior disruptions, emotional issues that cause disruptions to learning as well, maybe heightened suicidal ideations. So we'll be doing a big push with mental health to make sure everyone understands the type of support that is offered through our departments, and even bringing in clinical therapists for the schools. We already have contracted clinical therapists coming in, but having more, because the ones we have barely support, just the small number that we refer, but we see a greater number. And we're not leaning heavily on mental health therapists. We're leaning on making schools become more of a second home, in a sense, instead of, just showing up for your lesson, making it back like how we felt in the day. We knew about our mascots, we knew our school colors. It was more of an inviting environment to welcome you in. And so we saw there's a great need to make sure every student feels welcomed, loved, and supported. And then we can break down all the other issues, because some of the issues are not at home. It's just with the anxiety of how you're going to be treated at school.
Right.
Did you also find that with the virtual learning that there were maybe children who had strengths that were not discovered because they were in this traditional setting, and now that we're in this virtual setting, some other things, their strengths came to light.
Yes, they were shining. Yes, I did actually hear stories of certain students that, I guess, the virtual platform gave them, I guess that was like their niche. And so they heard better, learned better, almost like hands on in a sense,
Right.
because some of the work that they did was like, right hands on the computer, having the teacher being able to write things out right in front of you instead of being in the back of a classroom distracted by whoever 5 rows ahead or a tight classroom. So there were things that were noticed and considered as far as how they will structure classrooms from elementary through high school going forward, and other opportunities. The specifics I'm not aware of, but the discussions of structure definitely came
Mhm.
up, and continuing to use virtual learning, not from just home, but in other ways to learn in the classroom, like even in a computer. I forgot what, a computer center where you can take certain classes on the computer in the building,
Mhm.
and the teacher is kind of like guiding, your work as she's walking around. Talks of doing more of that, because
Okay.
all schools did not have that advantage of having all that technology, and then some schools did, and they just see that you have more kids that can thrive with that, but we just have to think about breaking away from this traditional standard,
Right.
um, so our students can rise up to their potentials.
Mhm.
So, what are some of the benefits? Because, like, okay, so I have two kids, but I don't know what are some of the benefits of social workers in the school. Like, for parents that don't know, like, what are the benefits of having a social worker in the school system, or knowing the social worker in your child's school?
The benefit, I would say, because a lot of people do not know about the social worker unless they've had some crisis happen. It's
Right.
a great bridge to understanding um, how one important mental health in your families are. And I'm not talking about just chronic mental health like bipolar, schizophrenia. I'm talking about self care, taking care of yourself, recognizing when you're overloaded, understanding what kind of resources you have in your environment for babysitting, cooking, um, spiritual supports, exercise, even, because there are just things that a lot of our families just don't know about, even in their communities. They only know what grocery store, nearest grocery store, package
Right.
store, shopping venue, and fast food places, and they don't know a lot about some of the resources that are right in their community. So we definitely support those. A lot of those agencies reach out to us so that we can, sorry, so that we can share their um, whatever activities or whatever they have that could support the families, especially in our environments, because we have a lot of disenfranchised parents, and we try to connect them with as many resources as we can, even with finances, learning how to have a actual checking account. Um, what else do we do? Balancing checkbooks, communication. We do a lot of parent engagement type of activities when we can. And this coming year, we definitely will have more opportunities because they have decided to have one school social worker per school, as opposed to one social worker in three that has 3 or 4 schools. So
Oh,
a lot of these activities that we can share with parents, now we can double down and be a real presence in the school instead of a, swoop in, save the day, go on to the next thing, next crisis. We can definitely be more of a resource.
okay. Do you think students are aware of of the uses of the social worker in the school?
In our district, mostly high school students are aware of the social worker. They tend to seek you out. They
Okay.
tend to know where to go. They tell, when their friends are having issues, they know who to go to. And fortunately, we do have those kinds of social workers that make themselves available and make sure that students are aware that they're there for just that purpose. In the middle school and elementary schools, those students mostly are referred by staff members because they don't have the freedom to kind of move about the building as, our high school students for the most part. So those are mostly referrals. But the lesser schools that a social worker has, the more likely the students are aware that they're there and what services they provide. But the more schools, of course, it's just more hectic, And so you only meet the social worker at the point of you're having a crisis.
Okay. So while you were working and all of that, your family was experiencing, the pandemic as well. So do you find yourself sometimes being the social worker at home?
I'm the social worker at home. I'm the social worker for my extended family and friends when it comes to any kinds of needs. And if I don't have the answer, they know I'm connected to someone in the field that, can assist too.
So what
So
kind of steps do you take for self-care and those types of things? Because if everybody's always calling you and everybody's looking to you, what avenues do you use to make sure that you're held together?
I like listening to music. I will zone out and listen to music. I'll go for a drive, even if I don't really have anywhere to go particularly. I'll drive to see houses. Like I love mini mansions, and I know some places. I'll look them up and just kind of drive to that area and just go and sip on some of my smoothies that I like from Arden's Garden. I love Arden's
Okay.
Garden. I may go sit in the parking lot and watch people walk in and out of Target while I eat my Panera salad and and sandwich. It's relaxing to me. I love
Okay.
doing that. This is all my pandemic self care. This is not normal self care. But yeah, for the pandemic, that's how I get out of the house, get away, don't have to answer calls or anything. But outside of the pandemic, I would do the movies. I like doing stuff with my husband anyway, so we'll just go do a couples thing together and just have fun by ourselves. And that's kind of how I get to myself.
Okay. So working in the school system, I know you talked about the different resources that's allowed. Are you allowed to, um, I guess, to offer religion or religious type things as a resource? Or is that like forbidden in the schools?
I would say it's definitely not something you want to broadcast that you do because they want to keep religion and education separate. But in most of my buildings, I wouldn't say 100% of the staff is professes, you know, their belief in God or their faith, but it comes up all the time. And even sometimes if I don't bring it up, the student may bring it up, to ask even as far as suicide. I've had students say, "Do you think if I did try to kill myself, I'd go to hell?" And then that conversation goes on. And so I tread very lightly around it, but I get out enough about it that they feel like they know where I'm coming from, but it's still something they have to think about for themselves on how they really feel about what I've said and what they've been taught, or the ambiguity about what they think they've been taught, because a lot of our kids are told, just like I probably was, don't go to hell if you kill yourself. And then that's it. There's no explanation about
Right.
why someone feels that you would go to hell. So just having that candid conversation about why someone would say that, and then go kind of drive it right back to, but why would you want to kill yourself? What don't you have to live for? And then trying to find the things about what you have to live for. So turning it back into what it needs to be, a conversation, not to make a decision on not doing something because you may go to hell, but why do you want to live? And
Right.
so it does come up a lot, but I
You said
probably
that,
wouldn't put
I'm
it in
sorry.
any of my notes. Sorry. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
You said that you've been doing like working in the schools for pretty much your whole career, 20 something years.
Yes.
Um, is did you kind of just stumble into this population with children, or did you choose to work with children?
I definitely chose to work with children. I wanted to be a teacher for a hot second, and then I decided just it looked too um like they couldn't move about. I have a lot of energy, and I like to kind of move around and be creative, and it felt like something I could not maintain focus in. So I was trying to find what else I could do. So I did psychology. I was gonna be a school psychologist. I didn't know what they did, but I knew they worked in schools. Once I learned that they did most of our testing for special ed, that still seemed a little narrow for me. And in my third year of my undergrad, a young man gave me a book about social work because all I knew about social work was DFAT. And so when he let me read that, I saw the whole broad world of what social workers could work in. And I saw school, and that's how I got into school social work. I did my internship the last year of that that undergrad program, got into the MSW program, and then did an internship there, and then got hired right after I graduated a few months later. That was all God, but he lined it right up for me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, social work, the only thing I've ever known, about social work, like you said, is like the defects part of it.
Hmm.
I didn't
Yes,
realize that they had such a prominent role in the school outside of just, if you're being abused at home or whatever.
right.
So that's really, really informative. Do you think, like, for our community, do you think our community is aware of your role in the school, or do you feel like parents, like, don't really have any real idea?
It's difficult. I'll just say because even before I came along, the school social workers were saying that they always have to explain themselves to parents and staff that they're not defects. And we don't want to demean defects, but we know their role is tied to that legal side. If you break the law and you harm your child in any way, then, defects is who steps in to do an investigation. And so they don't understand that defects workers are not social workers per se. They can have related backgrounds in their bachelor's, from their bachelor's program from sociology, psychology, or social work and or human services to just be a caseworker to investigate cases. So when we announce ourselves in our school environments, people are always saying, "Oh, that defects worker came, you trying to get my child?" So we have to explain ourselves and what our role is in the school. Even if there is abuse and we see it in the school, we don't investigate, we make a referral to defects for them to do their investigation. And then sometimes youth crimes, who that's the police side to do their investigation. So no matter how many times we explain it, it still gets difficult. Even when I say who I am, most people say, and then we have, Miss Curvey, the school counselor. It's very difficult to say the social worker, but it's a real title. Licensed clinical social workers, usually if you go to any counseling agency, you'll have an LCSW or an LPC. LPC is the licensed professional counselor. The LCSW is the licensed clinical social worker. Those are your therapists. They make the same amount of money, and they're also synonymous to your psychologist. And so a lot of people don't realize that. They look at social workers kind of like just the people that take your kids away, don't make that much money because all we know, and that's from TV as well, is DFACS or CPS. So
Right.
we'll be talking about it forever and ever, explaining who we are and what we do. But that's just a part of the territory.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Alicia, for sharing all your everything that you do with us and for enlightening me, because there was so much that I really didn't know. We do have a second half of the show. We are gonna bring in, she'll have to tell you her exact title. I
Okay.
know her. She is a mental health counselor of some sort. Her
Okay.
name is Angel Alexander, and we're gonna bring her in.
Hello.
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 Hey, Angel, thank you for joining us. So, yeah, jump right in and tell us your actual title.
Okay, I'm a licensed mental health counselor, so LMHC, and also
Okay.
a nationally board certified counselor. Same thing though.
Okay. And so, what do you do?
Well, I own a private practice where I do counseling services with individuals, couples, and families. I also run groups and supervise limited permit or provisionally licensed individuals and students.
Wow, you do a lot.
You know?
Okay, so like I told her, we're gonna start with something easy. So this pandemic, last year and a half, um, what has been your experience on the professional side of things, like with patients and
Uh, you said we're gonna start with something easy.
yeah.
So I don't know. But I mean, it's been really, I would say, challenging as a clinician on this side because obviously the pandemic brought a lot of different mental health issues to people, whether it's just being home and dealing with depression, dealing with family stress. A lot of times people were able to get away and go to work or have a lot of outlets, right? Whether it was church or shopping or the gym or whatever that they didn't have access to for over a year. So I definitely saw a spike I mean, I think all of the clinicians saw a spike in referrals and people reaching out to want to come in for therapy. And so the challenge is that there's only so many of us and there's so many people that need services. And so a lot of us have been feeling overwhelmed and sometimes, feeling bad that we can't help as many people as we would like to, given that we understand the circumstances that everyone is in. Because we're going through the pandemic ourselves. And
Right.
so, we have to also try to figure out how to take care of ourselves while helping everyone else deal with anxiety, chronic anxiety, right? Every day you go out your house, you have to be worried about getting sick or getting somebody else sick. You have to prepare, you have to put a mask on your face, right? So mentally, we're not even thinking about what this does to us on a day-to-day basis when we're living in this chronic state of anxiety.
Wow. Okay. I
Did you
mean, go ahead.
now you continue to see patients during the pandemic? Did you have to pivot and kind of do virtual sessions? And how was that?
It was a little bit of a challenge. I like being face to face. I was
Mhm,
used to
mhm.
being in the office, and I think I was there until they told us you cannot be in the office anymore. And I mean, part of that was just not understanding the severity of what was happening early on in the pandemic. But I mean, it was a tough adjustment initially, but now I'm kind of used to it. So now I'm on the flip side where I'm like, oh Lord, do I want to go back into the office? But I've been thinking about doing maybe something hybrid because I see that it's still beneficial to do telehealth.
Do you
Okay.
feel like people are kind of more comfortable in their own space speaking with you?
Yes and no. I think it depends on the content of and the circumstances that each individual is dealing with. Sometimes, if the stressors are at home, right, you don't want to talk about your husband if he's laying next to you, or
There's that.
yeah, like kids are running around and you might not be
Right,
able to get out. Sometimes coming into the office was a place where you knew you were coming just for you, no distractions,
right,
totally safe
right.
to have those conversations. And so, to some degree, it's helpful because people are not rushing from work and calling, saying, I'm running late, it's traffic. But
Right.
to some degree, it's challenging. I have a lot of people sitting in their cars, or doing things like that to be able to have a session.
So Alicia's a social worker for a school district. Did you did you like find yourself talking with teachers, more teachers than normal, because of everything that was happening?
Um, not more than normal, I would say.
Okay.
Probably, I mean, I think teaching is difficult, being in the school system is difficult too. And so I had already a fair share of teachers that I was working with. So not more than usual for me.
Okay. Do
Mm.
you deal with children at all?
No, not really. I have a few adolescent that when I was doing my clinical hours and stuff like that and just trying to learn what my niche was and what population I wanted to work with specifically that I worked with and that have stayed with me all this time. But I've identified that niche and it's working with, adults and people over 18. But some of the people that I supervise do work with children.
Okay.
Hmm.
I did have a question for you. With some of the clients that you had, based on the pandemic, did any of their social ills come from lack of stability, from like housing or losing jobs or anything like that?
Absolutely. All of the above. The pandemic hit in so many different ways. Especially, I think the biggest one for me was the financial impact of people getting laid off and furloughed, and also the uncertainty, right, of not knowing how long am I going to be in this situation? How long is this going to last? That's very, very stressful and anxiety provoking, especially if you have
Mm-hmm.
people relying on you. So I definitely
Yes.
saw that. Hmm.
Okay, so I saw I know you did another kind of live thing and you was talking about boundaries. And I know as women we're gonna take on everything. Like you the mom, you the woman, I got it. I'ma hold it down, I'ma hold it together. And we don't even know what a boundary look like a lot of times. Talk to us about that some.
Where do I start? Well, I mean, I like to, obviously, boundaries is definitely something that I work with people on to talk about all the time, right? Because they are so essential to the quality of the life that we have. We have to develop boundaries based on our value system, based on who we are as individuals. And really knowing yourself helps you to determine what type of boundaries you're going to set in your life.
Right.
Right. And so it's hard for people to kind of adjust that because sometimes who you are might be different than who somebody else is and their expectations of you, and it doesn't coincide. So a lot of time is spent on figuring out, like, how do I implement these boundaries? How do I set these limits when sometimes people are expecting different things from me? And not just people, that could be work, that could be kids, that could, a lot of different areas.
Right. And so what about the thing with saying no? Like I know no, like, I've seen people they will like break out in a sweat. Like, no just really like is that like is that like a mental thing where you feel like no is such a bad word? Like where does those types of things come from?
Well, let me ask you, how easy is it for you to say no to people?
Now you know me,
I
so
know.
you already know the answer to that. I mean, anybody like outside of my family, like, yeah, I'm just like, nah, I'm good. But I will say I definitely struggle with no with my family. Like I feel like not like I'm supposed to do it, but I'm supposed to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that's where it comes from, right? Like this feeling of obligation to do things that other people or entities expect us to do. And so I think there's a lot of reasons, whether it's just family, right? Like sometimes growing up, people tell you what to do. You don't really have a choice, especially culturally, right? Like you grow up in
Yes.
my house, you got to go say hi to this person. You got to
Right.
do that. There's not even a acknowledgement sometimes, even from that young developmental stage of what a boundary looks like, right? Because people
Right.
are always infringing them upon you. So as you get older, it's even more difficult because now you have all of these different messages about what you should and shouldn't be doing, right?
Right.
What is the expectation of a good wife or a good student or a good sister or this, that, and the third? And we're so fearful of one, not fitting into that role. And two, like people get mad at you, and then you got to deal with attitude. You got to argue with people, And so a lot of times we want to just people please in an effort to avoid conflict and to avoid feeling guilty about things, but really it's to our detriment. Because if we're doing things that don't align with our overall health for someone else, right? How is that helpful? And where does that leave us? Does it leave us feeling resentment for the people, our family members who are asking us to do things that we don't want to do? Does it
All
leave
the
us
time.
feeling burnt
Right.
out? burnt out, right? Especially you see this too
Oh
at
yeah.
work, right? You get a whole laundry list of things you got to do for work, and it's all this pressure because you got to get your money, got to get a check, and at the end of the day, you don't have energy to pour into your family or to yourself. So I don't know all of so many different reasons where that no comes in, or fear of no, I should say, comes in. But I think, you know, understanding yourself, understanding that it's okay, it's not selfish
Right.
to prioritize your needs. In fact, it's necessary because if I'm not well, I don't have anything to give to anybody else. I can't pour from an
Absolutely.
empty cup,
Yep.
you know?
Right. Absolutely. I like the old, no, honestly, like the older I've gotten, like now, I mean, I'm even better with my nose now. Like, like, but I have to say it was definitely like a learning process because I went through that stage where, I felt bad when I said no to people.
Yeah,
And then I had to realize like I got to get over this. Like I can't, sometimes I just can't cuz either I'm just tired, I've just done too much for you.
yes.
Sometimes it's just enough. Like but it does take time to definitely get to that point. And I think, yeah, especially women, I know we struggle with that. We gonna make it happen. We
Mhm.
gonna rub together two rocks and create a mansion. Whatever we gotta do, especially, and if
Yes.
you're a mother, oh gosh, if you're a mother, you gonna wrestle a bear if you have to,
That's right.
for the sake of
Yeah.
your kids. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah, but sometimes those behaviors are unhealthy though.
And then at the same time, you ask yourself, what am I teaching my child? Am I showing them that it's okay to not take care of you, right? And it's not living only in no, but it's being okay that sometimes there will be a no, right? And that
Right.
we always understand and kind of talk about the fact that we're going to get pushback from the people that we're saying no to, but we don't always talk about the fact that there's guilt on our side for doing that. And what I tell people, I tell my clients is, okay, it's okay. Guilt is just an emotion, right? You can process that. You can understand, why am I feeling guilty? Why am I feeling this way? And you can work through it, but you don't have to compromise your boundary just because you're feeling guilty. You don't
Right.
have to give that up. You know
Right.
what I mean? And the people who love you, eventually, they might be mad at first, but eventually they're gonna get used to it. They're gonna be like, "Don't even ask Angel because you already know she ain't with that." Right? And this is what we really, the message that we want to pass on to our kids, right?
Right.
Learning how to know yourself, know your limits, know what's important to you, and maintain that to the best of your ability. You might not always be perfect, you know what I'm saying, but you just do the best that you can to keep those boundaries on lock.
Absolutely. So today marked a year since the killing of George Floyd. And I
Mm.
saw, I did just a little bit of research, and I saw that in this year, over 1,000 people, it was like 1,068, like in the 50 states or whatever, had been killed by police officers in a year. Um, is that something you have been finding coming up in some of your counseling sections, like, the police killings or the anxiety about racism, anxiety about police, any of that?
Absolutely. A lot of that, actually, because it, it impacts people. And for me, I work with, I would say probably 70-80% of my clients are African American. And so when these things hit our community, there's a different emotional impact that we have. And so one of my colleagues had did like a live too, where she was talking about what it means to be a clinician during this time, right? We had the pandemic, we had the whole Black Lives Matter, all the
Right.
protests, like you said, the police killings. And it's like, it's times where it's just like, we're always supposed to be a mirror and hold our emotions, that we had to express that, fit in those feelings with our clients, because it's hard. And so, like, I mean, to understand that, to work in environments where people don't understand what's happening, and on
Right.
top of the fact that people are already dealing with feeling depressed, feeling anxious, and feeling that, it definitely created another layer and challenge for me as a clinician. I could just speak for myself. But I like to create space for people to have those conversations because that's what therapy is for. You got to be able to work through those feelings.
Do you
So,
feel
go ahead.
do you feel that with everything that's been going on, that more people in our communities have kind of overcame that whole stigma with therapy and found that yes, I do need to speak with someone? You found that in this time we've been able to overcome that more so?
Definitely more so than probably in the past, however many years, right? And I think that's also generational. I see a lot of
Mhm.
people of us of like maybe 30s, 20, that age group seeking out therapy services. And a lot of them tell me they want their parents to come, but their parent is not
Mm,
open or willing to come to therapy because there's still so much stigma attached, right? Like,
Right, right,
what's wrong? What's wrong? Something wrong with you? Why you got to go see a therapist? Like, there's
right.
people that their parents get mad at them for having a therapist. So while I've seen a lot of us overcoming that, I still see a lot of the stigma in our community, specifically when it comes to
Hmm.
accepting the fact that therapy is a healthy thing. And it doesn't
Hmm.
mean that something's wrong with you, right? It means that you're
right,
in
right.
and you want to learn healthy ways to cope and to deal. And you also want to be able to learn about what unhealthy patterns have you been perpetuating that haven't been working for you. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? So it's kind of a mix, but I see the tide shifted. I
Yeah.
would say that.
What do
Well,
you do to help shift the mental health awareness as an individual or your agency?
Well, one, I see a therapist myself, and I tell all therapists to get a therapist, right? Because that
Yeah.
part of it is just us doing it and being able to have that word of mouth to let people know that it's okay to normalize that. And then I just also do things like this and talk to different people and promote and just do really anything I can to help destigmatize therapy. And therapy doesn't have to look just like what I do, but I also support other clinicians and colleagues and what it is that they do because there's so many different ways and forms, to be able to get help.
Right. Thank you.
Hmm. Hmm. Thank you.
Okay, so I see that like I don't know. I see like with a lot of people now, I hear a lot about taking medications and they on this medication for that and for the anxiety I take a pill for that and when I'm overstressed I take a pill. Do you advise medicine a lot or is that like a last resort or how do you kind of gauge it?
Well, for me, it's definitely the path of least resistance, right? So I'm going to try to do everything that we can do before we get to that place where medication is necessary.
Mhm.
But and ironically enough, right? Like before I actually started practicing, I was one of those people like, no, I'll never refer people to medication. People don't need
Right.
medication, right? I think that's partly cultural and for valid reasons.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of fear and stigma associated with that as well. But one of my friends always says, like, if you were diabetic and the doctor told you you had to take insulin, you're not going to sit there and think twice about having to take it. Or people that got high blood pressure don't mind taking medication, right? Your brain is an organ in your body, and it is literally
Hmm.
a body part. So there are times when there are, whether it's neurotransmitters or different chemicals, right, that are doing things or maybe not balanced the way they should. And I've seen firsthand the benefit of people's lives when they are able to utilize medication plus therapy
Okay.
when it's necessary. So definitely I don't recommend it as the only form because I don't think there's a pill that just fixes whatever's happening in your life.
Right.
But
Right.
I think it is a tool that is here for us to utilize, and that piece is one that I really hope we destigmatize, especially in
Okay.
our community, because there's nothing wrong with you if you have to take medication. If when you're not taking medication, if you can't work, if you are crying all day, if you have severe anxiety that's debilitating, and no matter how much talking we do, you can't, because you're so anxious, you can't even implement the skills, and the
Right.
medication helps you to at least be less anxious, right? So that you can do the things that we talk about in therapy. Please
Right.
do it. Please, have a better quality of life, and don't be afraid of it.
Hmm.
You could get second, third opinions. I tell people all the time, like, listen, talk to your doctor, see what they say. You don't even have to take it. You don't have to agree with it right off the bat, but at least you have the information and you can make an informed decision.
Right.
Yeah.
So hi, Gwendy. So she said, do you think the parents of young people have trust issues?
Hi, Miss Wendy.
I know,
Um,
right?
yes, I think they do. I think they have some apprehensiveness, and understandably so. We, especially Black people, people of color, wherever, honestly, Caribbean, Latino, whatever, Latinx, we are told, like, yo, your business stays in the house. You're not
Right.
allowed to go talking about people business out there, right? So there's a lot of cultural things
Right.
that come into play when we feel like we're about to go in and talk about the things that are happening in our lives. We're just conditioned that we can't trust the world, and for a lot of reasons, I understand why that happens, right? And that's why I be pushing for all of my Black and brown students to go become a social worker, become a mental health counselor, become a psychologist, get that PhD, because the
Mhm.
more representation we have, the more trust we're going to have in the treatment that we're getting. Because a lot of my clients feel like they want someone that can relate to them, that understands the culture and the way that they grew up and how that impacts their view on therapy or medication or all of that stuff.
How important is it, do you think, for people to find a therapist that they can relate to culturally? And I'll just say this, that when I was grieving and I went to see um, a therapist, it did not work out for me. And this is why, because I was dealing with a lot of anger and I was mad at God, and she she didn't get it. Like, she was very dismissive of my angst about trying to maintain the fact that I'm trying to make it into heaven, but
Right.
I've still got some issues with the Lord. You understand
Absolutely.
what I'm saying?
Yes, I
So,
do.
like, how important is it, do you think, for us to? I'm about to lose my. I'm sorry. I don't
Listen,
want this
don't
to
let
be
it
the
die
day.
on us now.
Right, I wanted to die. So how important is it for people to find therapists that understand them culturally, their religion, even just racially?
Yeah.
How important is that?
I think it depends on the person, but I think it is very important. I think it's important because the there's a lot of research that says, right, a lot of the efficacy or like success of therapy comes from that therapeutic relationship. So being able to connect with your counselor is essential, and being able to build a relationship where you feel like you can come in, you don't got to necessarily explain every single little thing and
Right.
that,
Right.
to kind of like, have those conversations. And but I think so I think that is important. I have a lot of clients. I even had some, I don't know if y'all saw This Is Us, or where Randall, one of the characters, had a
I
white
did.
therapist who he was
Right.
doing some good
Yes.
work with. But then when
Mhm.
Black Lives Matter hit, he was like, yo, I need somebody that looks like me for
Right.
these issues that I'm dealing with. And I've had quite a few clients come over in that realm as well. So I think it just depends on a case by case situation. As long as you have a counselor who's willing to ask questions, right? Who's willing to understand, okay, Katrina, what does that mean to you that you're feeling angry about God, and really understand why that is so significant for you. It
Right.
doesn't matter what race they are, they can do a good job of it. You
Right.
know what I mean? But
Mhm.
they have to be, because there's some things even amongst Black people, right? Or different Caribbean people, like it's some things different from Haitian to Jamaican or
Right.
Guyanese to whatever. So just being the same culture or color doesn't necessarily mean that I'm gonna get it all, but I'm willing to be like, okay, so and y'all, how does this work in this culture?
Mhm.
How does that?
Right.
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 So, but it's important.
So somebody just brought up, that stigma, what happens in this house stays in this house. and we teach our children that, and we grow up, with that saying, and it's like a cloud, that kind of hangs over you. Like, how do we get out of that? How do we, yeah, like, how do we get out of that? Just maybe in our own family, not, how do we break away from that type of thing?
Well, one, we got to understand that when we say what happens in this house stays in this house, that's exactly what happens, right? What happens in this house stays happening in this house
in this
over and
house.
over
Right,
until we are able to break free from those things,
Mhm.
right,
right, in a healthy way. So I think one is just awareness and conversation of changing what we think about those things. I get it, right? Like, I'm not saying you could go to Joe Schmo at the corner store and let him know all your business, but sometimes, and not even just therapists, right? Like, sometimes your friends or your pastor or your support system, you need some type of outside, because whatever's happened in my house is usually all I know. So that's normal to me
right,
until I get outside and see, like, oh, your parents don't do that, your family don't do this. Oh, wait, maybe I shouldn't have been having that, been treated like this, and maybe that's why I'm doing X, Y, and Z. So understanding that to pass on healing,
right,
we need to stop being so secretive, because in those secrets lies shame and guilt, and we can't address it, we can't heal it if we don't reveal it. So that's why in the church we say you got to take it to the altar, right? You got to
right,
literally bring that up. You can't just keep it in yourself. You got to, like, bring it out of you. And so we have to
Mhm.
do that with the things that are going on that maybe aren't so healthy for us in the house, and change the way we talk about that.
right. Wendy
That
said,
that's
thank
a no. Go
Mhm.
ahead and read that.
Sorry, I just want to read the comments real quick.
Yes,
Wendy
yes,
said,
ma'am.
"Thank you, Angel, because I need to trust you before I can be naked before you."
Right.
Absolutely. Imani, hey Imani, she said, "Wow, what happens in this house keeps happening in this house. Got to break the cycle." You're right. That was right. Go ahead, Elesha. I know
Phenomenal.
you want to say
Yeah,
something.
I love that. What when you said that, because I'm gonna steal that. But a lot of our parents really,
Yep.
that's who we have to break through, and not just our parents, some of our staff, to say report certain things so that we can help this student, because they're like, well, this and that happened to me when I was like, I'm good. But are you? And so,
Right,
they're not really, but we take a lot of time trying to lift staff to make sure they make the appropriate referrals, and parents to follow through with the referrals for mental health, because they have that huge stigma of, you're looking at my family as we're crazy, or I did something to cause this. And so that lift is really important. And when I see a family really get it and go after, mental health services, like just naked and unashamed, you see such magic. And it's not magic, but you just see the glow, you see the change, and then it impacts other family members. It's almost kind of like, I'm getting it, why don't you get it? Well, I'm good, I'm not crazy. But they've been so empowered, they are okay with hearing, oh, I'm not crazy. So I
right.
really love what you said. I definitely want to use that. What happens in this house keeps happening in this house. That was phenomenal.
Listen,
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna steal that too. Taiwan said, so if you hear it on another broadcast, be like, oh, yeah, that I'm stealing. So Taiwan said, Black people traditionally don't line up to unpack our issues with therapists. It's like an unwritten rule that we don't go to therapy. Meanwhile, we're walking with unnecessary stress and issues that can lead to inappropriate coping mechanisms.
Amen. That's the
Yeah.
truth. That is, I mean, because that's the truth, and that's how come we keep repeating patterns, right?
Right,
Because of the fact that we don't have any type of outside awareness to say that something about this is not healthy, and
right.
what is
Yeah.
that we need to shift or change so that we can change what is going on. So he's 100% right.
So what would you advise? And I know it's like hard to make a, like, I'm not asking you, for some life altering. I don't want to put you on no pressure, but like, how you see families and like everybody's kind of doing the same thing, and then you have that one person that they kind of call the black sheep, that says, "Hey, listen, this is crazy. Like, why are we doing that? Like, what would you advise to that lone unicorn in a family?"
see, this kind of go back to that boundaries in a way, right? Respect yourself and know what you know. You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
stand in that truth. And sometimes, no matter what you see, other people have to be ready. They have to be ready and willing to make those adjustments. So
Right.
I always tell people never underestimate the power of planting a seed because you never know when that seed is going to grow and how. And like you said,
Absolutely.
she pointed out, I have so many clients that come in, and a lot of like that's why I'm be so booked because once I'm working with one, next thing I know, their sisters coming, their cousin, their best friend, whatever. So like, you know, it's okay to be that black sheep. It's okay that if you see something that's unhealthy and not working for you, to figure out what shifts you need to make. And you know what? If they are not willing to change, and they're not willing to kind of like figure it out and it's hurting you, you might have to assess what a new boundary looks like. And you might have to figure out what kind of interactions you can have with certain family members who don't understand what is happening. Because sometimes you see things that are not right, and people don't want to do anything about it, and it takes a toll on you.
Right.
Hmm.
I'm there. So I know sometimes, life changes over time. Um, you move in a different direction. Should you feel guilt about moving, just changing your life or making different decisions? Sometimes you feel like you're leaving people behind, or you get you acting funny, or you think you're better than us. Um, should you allow those feelings to, like you said, alter your boundaries or stop your progress?
I mean, it's case by case, but my general answer would be that no, it's okay to feel those feelings. You don't have to be afraid of the uncomfortable. It's Listen, growth happens outside of the comfort zone, right? That's what they say. So when you're changing, when you're growing, when God is working on you, or whatever is happening in your life is happening, sometimes you're gonna feel a lot of uncomfortable emotions. And the truth of the matter is, it's a loss, right? It's a loss between what your life was before, what you thought before, and what you think now. And so sometimes it's like a little grieving process that happens with that, right? Oh my gosh, I don't see the same things I used to see. I can't hang out with the same
Right.
people I used to hang out with. And so it's okay to feel a little guilty about that. It's okay to feel sad about that. And it's okay to have all those emotions, but don't let it stop you from the progression of what needs to happen for you to be healthy. You know what I mean? And
Mm.
everything happens on a spectrum. So sometimes we go too much in the I can't deal with anything place because I'm working on me. And so like you want to be mindful of that too, but just stay in tune and stay in check with yourself and do what you have to do for yourself no matter what.
Okay. Taiwan said this might be a silly question, but is there therapy covered by insurance or all out of pocket? I would imagine the need for therapy has increased exponentially with COVID.
Absolutely. Definitely. I accept with insurance. I work with several insurance panels. I know a ton of colleagues and private practice that work with insurance, and some are out of pocket. So it just depends. I think the toughest part of getting therapy is finding the therapist and finding somebody that has an opening, finding who takes your insurance and all of that stuff. But usually, once you get over that hurdle, the process is smooth sailing from there. But you can definitely use your insurance.
I
Okay.
know during COVID, initially, some insurance agencies were doing free. You could get your mental health
Yes,
services for free up to a certain point. So I thought that was a great service.
absolutely. And they're still covering co-pays depending on the insurance company. So
Hmm.
people aren't even having to pay their co-pay. And also like check with your job and see if they
Oh,
look for EAP
EAP.
benefits. Exactly. Because I see a lot of people for 8 sessions, 10 sessions before they even have to worry about going through their insurance or, finances.
Hmm.
You did say that you also do some counseling for couples. So, with the pandemic, now these same people, you vowed, because, I got some friends, you vowed to love them forever, and now you stuck in the house with this joker a day. like because I know for me, some of my days was a little long. Sometimes I felt like he was breathing on my air. And don't get, I know it was like in my head, but some days I just, would be like, I want to breathe my own air today. Like, can I have my own air? So, what were some of the things that you noticed with couples during the pandemic?
And nobody told me that they needed to breathe their own air, but I can see that being an issue for sure. But no, listen, if you married or whatever, you understand what that means, and you still
Right,
know it's love at the end of the day. But
right,
a lot of the stress that I saw could have been like financial was definitely one,
right.
taking a toll, and then I think just like that being together a lot in that shortness and anger and more arguments and more frustration, and for some people it brought them closer, and for some people it exacerbated issues that were already there that
Right.
you could kind of avoid by not having to be around each other all the time. So it really got a little. And then honestly too, another thing that I didn't see but some of my colleagues did was domestic violence, an increase in physical
Mm,
altercation during COVID. So it's been a heavy impact on couples during this time.
right.
Mm,
Wendy said, are the virtual sessions available?
absolutely. I'm 100% virtual right now. Indefinitely. I have an office, but I'm not in it right now. And a lot of my colleagues are virtual. Some of them are hybrid. So definitely virtual opportunity.
Yeah, it's sad to say, but the whole domestic violence, like I said, being stuck in the house, I think it's just that the anxiety of feeling trapped. And you don't if you're not careful, you can run out of places to put that anxiety. And so, you stuck in there with that person, and before you know it, you throw in that pot because got on got on your last nerves. I could definitely see it happening.
Absolutely.
Um, so I know therapy is mostly the basis, I guess, of therapy is it has to be communication. So, like, have you had experiences of where people like come to therapy but then don't want to talk?
Yes. Right. And I'm sure she sees that too in the school setting, right? But um
Yes.
you get people who come in and maybe they don't know what to say, or they want to do the process but they're not 100% comfortable yet, so you kind of have
Right.
to like pull, and you just be patient. You just be patient with people and meet people where they are. Therapy is just one tool. You're only going to be in therapy for an hour or two a week, but you're going to live your life outside of there for the most part. So I don't
Right.
rush people. I try to just help them wherever they are. But you do get some, long sessions sometimes where you try to get people
Pump
to
and prime pull.
exactly.
So I tried seeing a therapist before. She didn't look like me. I was trying to see this lady when I was in Illinois, and I would go, and she would spend like she would talk a lot. So like in between, like I'm trying to tell her, what I'm feeling or what I'm thinking, and she before I could get it out, she was, I guess, calling herself giving me an answer, or trying to tell me I shouldn't think like that or I shouldn't. And it got to the point where I kind of just stopped talking. And she was like, "Well, you're not talking." I was like, "Cause you don't shut up." Like we couldn't figure out like the happy medium. Like it really kind of like messed me up because I was like, all you doing is making me angrier. And now I gotta go back home to where I was angry when I left. I was angry when I left there. That's why I'm here.
Right.
And now you making it worse. She didn't get it. He said, if I paid you if I paid you under the table, would you just tell my wife she's wrong for all her spending and I'm right with everything? This would be mutually beneficial. You know what?
Oh
Child.
God. See, there
Listen,
was he had a lot of good questions at first, but
This went left.
Overboard.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But
Mm.
that's
Yeah,
funny.
like we couldn't. I don't know if it was like the cultural thing, but we couldn't like get on the same page. And then like I don't know, it started with like an EAP, so I think I had like 6 sessions before I would have to pay like a portion of it. So like when I didn't come back, she called me like, "Are you come back yet?" No, I'm good. But we didn't even break the ice. No, ma'am. You made the ice worse. Whatever, whatever ice was there, you have just thickened thickened the ice. She really didn't get it. I mean, and I'm a lot. I could be a little bit to take, but it didn't work.
And
Yeah, I think.
anybody that doesn't let you talk, I don't know. That's because you're very articulate. You're able to express yourself and what you're feeling. So I'm not going to judge her style, but that's
Right.
what, when I was talking about the research on therapeutic relationship. That at the end of the day, it's a relationship. It's somebody that you're coming to talk to and share with. So I encourage people. Even when they come to me, if I'm not a good fit for you, if our personalities don't match or my style of treatment isn't what you're looking for, that's okay. That's a part of the process. I just say don't give up. A lot of people I have come from several different therapists, and I'm sure some people that I may have seen ended up somewhere else. And I think the goal is not to give up, but it's hard, right? Because when you get that bad experience, like you were Katrina or whatever, it's like it almost turns you off to wanting to go.
Right. I just put all my crazy cats back in the bag and I brought them back home.
Right. Don't. That's what I encourage. I'm glad that you brought that up because I think that's an important piece too, right? It's
Yes.
not just the going to therapy or getting a therapist that makes the difference. It's finding somebody that you genuinely connect to, that you feel that you can share with, and that is going to kind of like challenge you in a positive way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, just think about it though. If somebody's like really on edge. I mean, luckily for me, I wasn't like on it. Well, I don't think I was on edge, but somebody that's on edge, that's a lot of work. Like, it takes a lot of courage to even be willing to share let's just say your broken pieces with
Yeah.
somebody. So
Yeah.
now here I come, and I'm hauled in all my broken pieces, and I'm trying to drop them in your office, and you saying, "Oh, this one, oh, that's too broken, or that one's ugly, or this is all wrong." Like, you can scar somebody way more than you can help them.
And
Absolutely.
that's why I give a disclaimer to my parents. If you feel a therapist is not working for you or your child, first give it, some time, some sessions, because it does take a bit of time to get adjusted to someone that you don't know at all. And so
Right.
you already have preconceived notions or, misnomers about just anything. So give it some time. And then if you still feel that way, you can find another. But my whole point is find another, don't stop because that one didn't work out. Go on and find another. Even sometimes you can ask the therapist for another recommendation. They shouldn't feel offended by it at all because it is about, like you said, rapport and building relationships. So they come and they go. We don't want anyone to stop and take their bags of cats
Absolutely.
home.
Listen,
Sure.
me and my cats are very happy right now.
Mhm.
They happy in their bag. Okay, so Angel, tell us, how long have you been doing this so
Um,
far?
so I opened my private practice in 2019, but I've been doing this since 2014. I got
See, I didn't
educated.
even know you had a private practice. I'm definitely feeling a little. No, no, I didn't know that part. I
I
mean,
didn't
I knew that you were doing it, but I still. Yeah, my mother left out that. She give all the details. She missed that one. So I
Yeah,
didn't know. Well, congratulations on a
thank
private practice.
you. Thank
That's
you.
awesome. So tell people, okay, so you got a private practice. Tell people how they can find you. If they need to talk, what they need to do. You in
Um,
New York. Tell people
yes,
where you are.
I'm in New York. I'm in Long Island, but with telehealth, I can do anywhere pretty much in New York now. And they can find me. My website is raylightny.com. And
Oh, let me
that's
type
about
that
it.
in.
Yeah.
You said that's about it.
Yeah, I can't remember my like I'm really good with social media and all of that. So I have an Instagram. It's on the website that you can find me on that as well. But
Okay, you said ray of light. What?
In NY.com.
Okay,
Yeah.
ray of light ny.com.
Mm-hmm.
Ray of light. Okay, gotta make sure I got that right. Pop it up there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right.
That's it. That's perfect.
Okay. So she said, oh look at that. I'm
Oh,
so
thank
proud
you.
of knowing the young woman you have grown into.
Thank
Oh,
you.
look, I should have known your sister wasn't playing. She said, I got this. Thank you, Imani.
Support system on deck.
Right. So yeah, and you said you do take insurances
Yes, I
and
do.
now with telehealth, because you said you're looking forward to possibly doing hybrid, right?
Yes.
So people from everywhere could still um talk to you virtually. That's great. I think that's awesome. So give us some quick pointers um of things we can do for self-care. I mean, not, I don't mean quick like make it fast. I just mean, like simple pointers that people can do, coming out of the pandemic, trying to find a new normal for their life. What are some of the things you could recommend to people?
Well, self care looks different for everybody. So I think the first part of self care is just taking inventory with yourself to find out what helps me to feel like I'm in a better place. For some people, that could be getting enough sleep, drinking enough water, making sure they're eating right throughout the day. Like you said, we're moms, we're working, we're doing all of this stuff. And sometimes we can neglect our physical health. So I feel like that is a big piece of self care that I try to encourage everyone. Exercise, get some sunlight. There is a therapeutic benefit to actually getting sunlight. It makes people feel better. Definitely journaling. I really encourage journaling for everybody. But if you're not big on writing, that's okay. You know what I mean? Not everybody likes to do that. Spend time with family and friends if that's what you like. If it makes you anxious because of the pandemic, don't feel pressured to go and be with people just yet. Take it step by step. So I mean, self care is so expansive. There's so
Right.
many different things I could say, but the main thing is do what makes you feel okay. Take care of your physical health. If you pray, meditate, definitely breathing. I tell people all day, you can just breathe. It don't matter where you are, what you're doing. You can just breathe. That helps you to center yourself. It definitely helps you to calm your emotions. And when you're paying attention to your breathing, you're not usually thinking about all the things that you got stressing you out or what you have to do later on. So those are some tips that I can give for self-care for now. And maybe she can add some too that she sees that work.
I was taking notes from your self care from for myself.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay, so thank you, ladies, for your time. Thank you for coming on and sharing. I so appreciated all the information, Angel answering all my wacky questions. It's just who I am. You gotta love me the way I am. But I so appreciate you guys. So I'm gonna take you off. We're gonna close. Just give me 2 seconds before you click out.
Okay.
All right, let's. All right, Trina, thank you for holding it down with me tonight. It was just me and you. We made it work. I appreciate you, of course, as always. To my viewers, thank you guys for coming in. Thank you for the questions. If you are watching this on the replay, first half of the night, we talked about social work in our school system with our babies. And the second half of the evening, we talked about mental health and kind of like a wide topic. But it was great information on both halves. So if you're a replay watcher, I hope that you enjoy. Until next week, thank you for joining us and be safe.